I'd been living in my car for about 6 months when it started. I don't mean homeless the way people usually picture it. I still had a car. It still ran. The windows weren't broken. From the outside, it looked normal enough that no one paid attention to it, and that was the point. Every night, I parked somewhere different, behind closed businesses, industrial streets, dead ends, places where a parked car didn't stand out. At least, that was the plan. The first night, I woke up to laughter. It wasn't loud, it was controlled, like they didn't want anyone else to hear it. I lay there, frozen, staring at the ceiling of my car. My phone said 2:41 a.m. The engine was cold. A streetlight outside flickered like it was about to die. Then a shadow crossed my windshield. Someone tapped the hood once. Not hard, almost playful. "Hey," a voice said. "You alive in there?" I didn't move. I didn't breathe. After a few seconds, the footsteps backed away. The laughter followed, fading into the distance. I told myself it was nothing, just kids messing around, drunk, bored. 3 nights later, I realized I was wrong. I was parked behind a closed hardware store in a wide-open lot where I could see everything. That's where I felt safest. No blind corners, no places to hide. Past 3 a.m., someone knocked on my driver's side window. Hard. I sat straight up. 3 guys stood outside my car, hoodies pulled tight, faces half hidden. One of them leaned down until his breath fogged the glass. "We know you're in there," he said calmly. I shook my head and mouthed for them to go away. He smiled. "We just want to talk." Another one walked slowly around the car, dragging his hand along the trunk. The sound made my chest tighten. It wasn't aggressive, just deliberate. After about 30 seconds, they stepped back. "Tomorrow night," the first one said, tapping the glass twice. "Same time." Then they left. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, I drove until my gas light came on. I told myself they'd never find me again. Different place, different area, different night. At 3 a.m., I woke up to the same laughter. Same voices. This time, there were 5 of them. They stood around my car like it belonged to them, talking to each other as if I wasn't even there. "He's got stuff in there," one said. "Check the back window," another replied. "Always got cash," someone else added. I reached for my phone, hands shaking. As soon as the screen lit up, one of them slapped the window. "Don't," the first guy said, his voice suddenly flat. "We're not here to hurt you, not if you cooperate." Another one leaned down, staring straight through the windshield. "Tomorrow night, leave the doors unlocked." They walked away, laughing quietly like they'd just finished a casual conversation. I called the police the next day. I tried to explain everything, but even I could hear how it sounded. The officer told me to find a safer place to stay and suggested a shelter. That night, I didn't sleep in my car. The night after that, I did. I parked on a residential street under a bright streetlight near houses with cars in their driveways. I thought that would protect me. At 3 a.m., someone tried the door handle. It was locked. They tried again, harder. Then a knock. "You broke the deal," a voice said right outside my window. Another voice laughed. "Guess he wants us to take it." Something hit the trunk. Not hard, just enough to let me know they could. I screamed. I don't even remember what I said. Lights came on in nearby houses. A porch light flicked on down the street. The footsteps scattered. That night, I slept with the engine running. 2 days later, I found the note.
It was tucked under my windshield wiper at a gas station. You can't move forever. I stopped sleeping after that. When exhaustion finally won, I woke up to silence. The driver's door was open. Everything I owned was gone. Clothes, blankets, backpack, spare change, even the note. Nothing was broken, no mess, no damage. Just the driver's seat pushed all the way back, like someone had been sitting there waiting. That was the last night I ever slept in my car. I swore something to myself after that. I swore I would work harder than I ever had in my life. I didn't care how tired I got. I didn't care how long it took. I promised myself I would never be in a position where a locked door was the only thing between me and people who knew I had nowhere else to go. And every night since then, when I lie down indoors, I still check the locks. Because once someone knows you sleep there, your car stops being shelter. It becomes a target.
I started sleeping in the woods because I thought it was safer than the streets. No people, no cops asking questions, no one noticing when you disappear into the trees. I found a spot about a mile off an old service road, deep enough that headlights never reached it. I built a small camp, nothing obvious, just a tarp, a sleeping bag, and a fire pit I barely used. I stayed quiet, invisible. That was the rule out there. Don't be seen. For almost a year, it worked. The night everything changed, I woke up to voices. At first, I thought I was dreaming. Then I realized the sound was wrong. Too clear, too close. I slowly sat up and listened. Two men were talking somewhere ahead of me, deeper in the trees. Their voices were low, tense, not drunk, not joking. I didn't move. I knew better than to announce myself out there. The light came next. A flashlight beam cut through the trees, sweeping across the forest floor. I ducked down behind a fallen log, heart pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. They didn't know I was there. That was the worst part. I watched from my hiding spot as two men stepped into a small clearing about 30 yards away. A third figure was with them, someone else. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could tell immediately something was wrong. He wasn't walking right. One of the men shoved him forward, not hard, just enough to keep him moving. "This is far enough," one of them said. The third person started talking fast. I couldn't make out every word, but I heard panic in his voice, begging, promises. I remember gripping the dirt so hard my hands hurt. I wanted to run. I wanted to make noise. I wanted to do anything except stay there. But I didn't. I stayed perfectly still. What happened next was quick, too quick. No shouting, no chaos, just a sudden silence where a voice used to be. One of the men muttered something I'll never forget. "No one comes out here." They stood there for a moment, listening. I realized they were doing exactly what I was, making sure they were alone. I pressed my face into the ground and didn't breathe. After a while they left. The flashlight disappeared. The forest slowly came back to life. Crickets, wind, distant traffic. I stayed where I was until the sky started to lighten. When I finally stood up, my legs nearly gave out. I didn't go near the clearing. I didn't check anything. I didn't want confirmation. I already knew what I'd seen. I packed my things and left the woods that morning. I went to the police. That was a mistake. I told them everything I could remember, the voices, the place, the timing. They asked me where I lived. When I told them I didn't have an address, the room changed. They took my statement. They thanked me. They never called me back. A few days later, I saw one of the men,
I recognized him instantly. He was standing outside a gas station, talking casually to someone, laughing. When his eyes met mine, the smile disappeared. He knew. I don't know how, but he knew I'd seen something. That night, someone walked past where I was sleeping and whispered my name. I never told anyone else. I stopped staying in the woods after that. I stopped staying anywhere long enough to be remembered. I learned that being invisible doesn't protect you. It just means no one notices when you're scared. What I saw out there changed me because I realized something I'd never understood before. The woods aren't empty. They're just where people go when they don't want witnesses. I never thought I'd end up living in a van. I had a job, an apartment, a routine. Then the company downsized, and I was one of the names on the list. I told myself it was temporary, just a rough patch. I'd find something else. By the time I admitted I couldn't afford rent anymore, it was already too late. The van was old, but it ran. I parked it on side streets, near grocery stores, anywhere I wouldn't stand out. I layered blankets in the back and told myself I'd be fine. People live like this all the time, right? That's what I kept telling myself. Winter came faster than I expected. At first, the cold was just uncomfortable. I'd wake up stiff, fingers numb, breath fogging the air. I wore every piece of clothing I owned to sleep. I kept the engine running when I could afford the gas. One night, the temperature dropped harder than usual. I remember checking my phone before bed. There was a weather alert I ignored. I woke up shaking, not the normal kind of shaking, the kind you can't control. My teeth were shattering so hard my jaw hurt. My fingers wouldn't close around my phone. The inside of the van felt like a freezer. I turned the key. Nothing. The engine tried, then stopped. I tried again. Same result. I told myself not to panic. Panic makes things worse. That's what people always say. I pulled another blanket over myself and curled into a ball. My thoughts started slowing down. Simple things felt hard, like figuring out how to sit up. At some point, the shaking stopped. That should have scared me. Instead, I felt strangely calm, heavy, like sinking into a warm sleep. I remember thinking it would be nice to just close my eyes for a minute. That's the last clear thought I had. I woke up to someone pounding on the side of the van. My vision was blurry. My body felt distant, like it didn't belong to me. A man's voice shouted, asking if I was okay. I couldn't answer. I don't know if I even tried. They told me later a passerby noticed frost on the inside of the windows. The hospital lights were too bright. My parents were there before I fully understood what had happened. The doctor said I was lucky. He used the word dangerous more than once. That night changed something in me. Not in a dramatic way, not all at once, but I understood very clearly how close I'd come to disappearing quietly without anyone noticing. I went back to my parents' house after that. It was humiliating. I was an adult, sleeping in my childhood room, answering questions I didn't want to answer. But I was alive, and I was warm. I worked whatever jobs I could find, temporary work, long hours, jobs I never imagined myself doing. I saved everything. I didn't complain. Every time I felt embarrassed, I remembered that van. Eventually, I found a steady job, then a better one. Years later, I bought a small house. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. On cold nights, I still wake up sometimes, heart racing, convinced I can't feel my hands. I get up and touch the wall, turn on the heater, breathe. Because the scariest part isn't the cold itself, It's how easily it convinces you to give up.
In 2018, I was living on the streets of Chicago. It was mid-November, and if you've ever been there during that time, you know the cold doesn't just chill you, it bites through your skin and settles in your bones. I had been sleeping behind a dumpster in an alleyway for 3 nights, but the local police were clearing everyone out for a city event. I had to move. I walked for hours until I found a massive construction site on the edge of the industrial district. It was a half-finished luxury apartment complex. The site was surrounded by a high chain-link fence, but I found a gap near the back where the dirt had washed away. I crawled under, hoping to find a dry corner to hide in. That's when I saw him. A man in a dark navy blue security uniform, holding a heavy-duty flashlight. I froze, expecting him to yell or call the cops. Instead, he just lowered the light and smiled. He looked like he was in his late 40s with a clean-shaven face and a very calm, almost soothing voice. "It's too cold for a man to be sleeping in the dirt," he said. "I'm Marcus. I run the night shift here. Why don't you come inside the trailer? I've got a heater and some coffee." I was hesitant, but the smell of coffee won me over. The trailer was small, just a desk, some blueprints, and a small cot in the corner. Marcus was incredibly nice, too nice looking back. He told me he'd been working security for 10 years and that he hated seeing people suffer in the cold. He told me that as long as I stayed out of sight during the day when the construction crews arrived at 7 a.m., I could sleep in the trailer with him during his 12-hour night shift. For the first 4 nights, it was a dream. Marcus would bring me sandwiches, usually ham and cheese, and we'd talk. But the conversations were strange. He didn't ask about my life. He only wanted to talk about the body. Not a human body, he claimed, but the human machine. He'd spend hours explaining how easy it is for a person to just disappear in a city this big. He'd say things like, "You know, if I buried something under the concrete pour in Section B, it would be under 40 feet of solid stone forever. Nobody would ever find it." I laughed it off as dark humor. Security guards get bored, I figured. But on the 5th night, things changed. The first red flags. On the 5th night, Marcus didn't bring coffee. He seemed agitated. He was sitting at the desk, staring at a static-filled security monitor. He wasn't even blinking. "Marcus, you okay?" I asked. He didn't turn around. He just said, "The real guard is coming soon. I can feel him." I was confused. The real guard? I thought you were the guard. He finally turned his head, and his eyes were bloodshot. A wide, jagged grin spread across his face. "I'm the better guard. I keep things quiet." That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed on the cot watching him. Around 2 a.m., I heard a thumping sound coming from underneath the floorboards of the trailer. It sounded like something heavy shifting in the mud. Marcus stood up, walked to the door, and looked out at the dark construction site. "He's getting restless," he whispered. I decided then that I was leaving the next morning, but when 6 a.m. came, the door was locked from the outside. Marcus was nowhere to be seen. I was trapped in that trailer for 3 hours until the morning crew arrived and unlocked the site. I slipped out the back before they could see me, thinking I had just dealt with a weird, lonely guy. 2 days later, I was at a gas station 3 miles away, trying to keep warm. I saw a group of people gathered around a wanted flyer taped to the glass. I walked over and my heart stopped. It was a photo of Marcus. But the name under the photo wasn't Marcus, it was Arthur Vance. The description read, "Escaped from the state psychiatric hospital, highly dangerous, known for impersonating authority figures." Underneath that, there was a news clipping from that morning. The body of the actual night security guard, a 62-year-old man named Thomas, had been discovered. He hadn't been buried under the concrete in Section B. He had been found wrapped in a tarp, stuffed into the crawl space directly underneath the security trailer where I had been sleeping for 4 nights. Arthur, or Marcus, had killed him on the first night I arrived. He had been wearing the dead man's uniform the entire time we were friends. The police report mentioned something that still keeps me awake at night. They found a notebook in the trailer. On the last page, dated the night I left, were my physical descriptions, my height, my weight, and the clothes I was wearing. Beside my description, Arthur had written, "The specimen is ready. The heater is on. He thinks I'm protecting him. He'll be much easier to hide than the first one. Tomorrow night, we become one under the floorboards." If I hadn't decided to leave that morning, if I had stayed just one more night because of the cold, I would be under those floorboards right now, lying on top of the man whose uniform Arthur was wearing while he fed me sandwiches. Arthur Vance was never caught. He vanished into the Chicago streets, likely looking for another uniform to wear and another specimen to protect. So, if you're ever out late and a stranger in a uniform offers you a warm place to stay, be very careful about who you trust, because sometimes the person keeping watch is the one you should be watching out for.